Okay. Hello! For anyone who is logging on, I'm gonna just say hi and let a few people start to log in to our live horseshoe crab walk today. It's not the nicest day, but it's a day, so that's okay. So if you guys are logging on to watch us, if you want to say hello in the comments, feel free. I'm gonna go step away for a moment to grab some horseshoe crabs. Let's see. Just typing. Alright, I turned it on.
You can hold it, but if you want to, I'm going to look for more.
Here, I'll turn this.
He might flip over and start running for the water.
We are live. We're just gonna go take a walk into the water for a brief moment. You can put it on the ground. Alright, hello everyone. So I'll introduce myself. So I think it's a little past 6. Let's see, 6:31, there we go. So I'll introduce myself just as people start logging on. So my name is Nicole Haines. I'm the Education Director for the American Littoral Society. You may have seen me in my starring role of reading Red Knot, An Incredible Journey. So today we are doing our virtual horseshoe crab walk. And as you can see, not the nicest day, but the crabs are here, so it's okay. I'll give a little brief overview of the society for anyone that's not familiar. So the American Littoral Society, we are a non-profit for coastal conservation, and we do a whole number of things, some of them being education. So today I'll be teaching you guys about some of the horseshoe crabs that come up on our beaches. We do advocacy, whether it be advocating for clean water or for access to public beaches. We do a lot of restoration work, so we will be talking about that a little bit later in the month. A lot of our restoration work is around restoring beaches for animals like horseshoe crabs. So we do a lot of that kind of work in South Jersey, and what we'll do is restore beaches like Reed's Beach, and we'll dredge sand, which means taking sand from out in the bay or the ocean and bringing it onto the beach and kind of spreading it out so we can recreate that beach. And that's really important so that animals like horseshoe crabs can come onto the beach. They can either mate, they can lay eggs, but they need the space to do that. So we have noticed that crabs have come up there and made use of these beaches, which is awesome to see. So all our hard work is really paying off. But later in the month we will have a tagging demonstration done by Captain Al, who runs our restoration department out of Sandy Hook. So if you guys are interested in seeing how we go about tagging and why that's important, he can answer all those questions and show everybody. And then lastly, we have a fish tagging program. So that is run by my coworker, Mr. Jeff Dement. And we have over 1,000 volunteers all along the East Coast that will go out on their own boats, or they'll go out just along the coast surf fishing, and they will catch local species like fluke or striped bass, and they'll buy a tagging kit from us. They'll tag those different fish. They'll record things like its weight, its length, where it was, and then they'll toss it back with that tag in the hopes that somebody else will catch that same fish, whether it be a day later, a week, a month, a year, however long, so that we can kind of record all of that information and find out what's going on in our waterways. Hi, Mom. So we have a few crabs here today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type it in the chats and I'll do my best to answer. And I'll ask questions if you guys want to respond. So does anybody know about how old horseshoe crabs are? It's quite a lot. So if you guys want to maybe take a guess, It's definitely more than 10 years old. It's definitely more than 100 years old. Does anybody have a guess as to how long horseshoe crabs have been on this planet? Some people like to call them living fossils. Do we have any guesses? I'm gonna grab one. Let's see. 600 years. Not quite, not quite. We gotta go way up. There we go. Okay, we're getting closer. 350 million years. So we like to put it around 450 million years old. So people like to say that they predate the dinosaurs. So these guys are kind of like living fossils. And we call them a horseshoe crab. But does anybody know what kind of creature they're actually more related to? So if they're not more related to a crab, does anybody know what that creature is that they are more related to? Can anybody take a guess? While we're guessing, I'll show off my friend here. Arachnids. There we go. Spiders. That's correct. Awesome, Lisa B. and Megan. So that's correct. These guys are actually more closely related to spiders than they are crabs. So they're actually kind of freaky looking if you've never seen one before, but they're really neat. It's always fun when I do programs for kids and even adults, and they get the chance to see these guys in person, because they're pretty freaky. So we're gonna take a look at this guy here. So does anybody know how exactly we can tell whether we're looking at a male horseshoe crab or a female horseshoe crab? There is a very simple way to tell. Does anybody know how? So you see someone said slipper snails. There's slipper snails on here, but that doesn't necessarily help us understand what the gender is of our horseshoe crab. We have to look at a certain part of it, and that'll help us out. So if we don't have any guesses, we're going to take a look at a certain appendage. Size is correct, but there we go. So males have boxing gloves, yeah, on the front arms. That's awesome. We have a lot of crabs here. Let's see if we can see. There they are. So if we take a look at this guy right here, and I can say guy because it is a guy. They have these appendages, like their little arms, and they all kind of look like chopsticks, except the two appendages that are up top, if it's a male, will kind of look like a boxing glove. So if we can see, we can see this round appendage right here and right here. They look kind of like boxing gloves. So what that means is that this horseshoe crab is a male, and those boxing glove looking appendages help them in mating. So what they'll do is they'll grab on to a female shell, and that kind of helps them hold on during the mating process. And typically, I saw somebody mention before that males we'll look at size when we're trying to figure out male versus female. So typically males will be smaller and the females will be larger. Girl power. So this guy right here, if he puts his let's see if we'll open up for us. There we go, there we go. So if we take a look in the middle right here, right in this part, does anybody think they know what that part of the horseshoe crab is? Kind of looks like bristles of a toothbrush. Does anybody know? I need help. Can someone explain to me what this is right here? Oh, we got a lot. Yeah, the mouth. That's perfect. Awesome job. Nice, Andy. Nice, Kathy. Rich. So this right here is the mouth of our horseshoe crab. So it looks similar to the bristles you would see on a toothbrush. And typically we don't want to put our hands into a creature's mouth because we might get bit. But in this instance, their mouth isn't really going to hurt us if I just kind of rub my finger across. It's not spiky. It's not going to try and bite me. Just lightly touching the end. Don't want to harm it. So these guys kind of have a toothbrush feeling mouth. And since they kind of crawl along like this with the tail down on the bottom of the bay or the ocean, their mouth should be facing down so that they can eat things that are below them. So whether it be like maybe different kinds of crustaceans or small creatures living on the bottom of the bay, that mouth needs to be facing down because they're crawling along the bottom. It wouldn't really help if its mouth was all the way up on top. So I'm gonna give this guy a break, get a different one. Alright, have a different guy so that guy can have a break. So apparently right now we only have males. Haven't found any females just yet. So this one's actually a little smaller. Kind of like the size of my head here. So I heard somebody mention before what we see on them. So if you guys see a few of these different shells on top of the horseshoe crab, somebody had mentioned that it was a slipper snail. And that is correct. It is a slipper snail. So these guys, we kind of like to call them hitchhikers, and they will stick on to different parts of the horseshoe crab, whether it be the outside of their shell or the underside of their shell, and they'll kind of just hang on there and live their life on the horseshoe crab. And if there are a lot of them on the crab, it may kind of weigh the crab down. It may not necessarily be painful, but it's just gonna weigh the crab down a bit. So this guy here has a good amount on him, but I've seen a lot of crabs with many, many more. So he doesn't have too many. We have a few big ones though, kind of getting covered in algae. So let me know if you guys can still hear me, because we got some boats going by. We also have some barnacles. See different barnacles on its shell. Now, does anybody know what this part of the horseshoe crab is right here? And is it dangerous? Thank you, Jennifer. Does anybody know? Right here, what is this part? And is it dangerous? What do we think? Do you have any guesses? Telson, tail, very good. Yeah, so this is the tail of the horseshoe crab right here, called the telson, more formal name for it. So if we ever find some of these horseshoe crabs maybe laying like this, upside down on the beach, so we have a few behind me, right here. So if we see them on the beach like this, well, they don't want to be facing with their mouths and their appendages up towards the sky. They are meant to be the other way around. So we definitely do not want to pick them up by this tail or telson. And the tail is not dangerous, doesn't sting you, won't barb you. This kind of helps them in ways in the water, so it may help them kind of navigate or swim as like a rudder. But also it's going to help them flip themselves over if they are caught on their backs on the beach. Because if it's a hot sunny day and they're caught on their backs on the beach, we don't want them to roast out there, and then they're going to be more vulnerable to other creatures around. So it's a possibility that maybe a bird will come and try and attack it because its hard shell that typically protects it is now beneath it. And I think Barbara asked a question about what happens if they don't have this tail. What happens? So if they were to lose their tail, they may not survive too long. It kind of depends what instances they run into. So if this horseshoe crab ends up on its back and it has no tail, it's not going to be able to flip itself over, because this helps flip it over. So what we would do if we came across this horseshoe crab on the beach is we would just give it a little hand, we would flip it over, but we always want to grab it by its larger shell. Like I said, we never want to pick it up here. And if they don't have the tail, then we definitely want to flip them over because they're not going to be able to do it themselves. So if we want them to survive, we're going to want to flip them over. And if they're kind of scrunched like this, if they feel the ground, they'll start to open up. But sometimes it can help if we just kind of rub the little muscle here, which is the hinge, but we want to be careful with our fingers, and then it'll open up, kind of like that. So then we would gently put it back down. So let's see if this guy will do it. Oh gosh, there's one right below me. All right, if you guys can see me, I'm gonna try and place this guy down. And he just flips right back open. And they're gonna head back towards the water in search of a female, most likely, so that they can mate. And then those females can lay their eggs on the beach. And I see somebody ask, what part of the beach are you on at Sandy Hook? Do they spawn there? So right now, I don't think I mentioned this before, I'm sorry. We are at Sandy Hook National Recreation Area in Highlands, New Jersey. And we are right across from B-Lot. So if you were to show up here and drive into the park, you're gonna wanna park in B-Lot and walk over to the bayside. So typically where we find these horseshoe crabs is on the bayside. That's where they'll come up, that's where they'll mate, that's where they will lay their eggs, and yet they do both here. So we will find some of these crabs' eggs out here a lot. So typically around this time of year, I do a lot of programs called Close Encounters with schools. So I'll have a bunch of kids out here and I'll allow them occasionally to go looking for horseshoe crabs and safely picking them up. But occasionally when we're seining, which means taking a really long net out into the bay and in search of different creatures, whether it be fish or shellfish, anything along those lines, when we pull that net up, what happens is sometimes we uncover some horseshoe crab eggs. And I don't have any to show you guys right now. They can be kind of hard to find and they're very small. So they'll lay hundreds, thousands of eggs and they're really, really small, even smaller than my pinky nail. And they'll be kind of greenish and blue in color. And they will end up kind of in clusters. So you may find like a golf ball size cluster, potentially, which would be easier to find. But typically we find smaller clusters, and occasionally if I find one, I'll get the chance to show some of the kids that will be out here or some of the adults if we're on a walk. But they're very small and typically they will bury their eggs in the sand a bit because there is a certain type of bird, which if you saw my reading, you would know what kind of bird, but it's okay if you don't. Does anybody know what type of bird comes along to our beaches along like the Delaware Bay, in the whole New Jersey region? What type of bird comes to eat the horseshoe crab eggs? What they do is they refuel their body weight so that they can continue their journey onward. And yes, I see Megan says red knot, Lisa says red knot. That's correct, so I'll show you guys a quick picture. So this was the book that I had read. If you don't remember this face. Well, hello Jeff, nice of you to join us. So this book is Red Knot, A Shorebird's Incredible Journey. And this bird right here, very colorfully drawn, is the red knot. So if I open up to the first page here, we'll see the journey that they make really, really far. Much farther than my commute from home to Sandy Hook. So, might be a little backwards, but we'll get the point. They're gonna go all the way down from Tierra del Fuego in the Argentina, Chile region. And they're gonna go stop up along the Delaware Bay in our New Jersey region, maybe a little bit of New York as well. They stop all along this region. They're gonna fuel up on these horseshoe crab eggs so that they have the energy to continue on all the way up into the Arctic, further north. So they're gonna have to eat a whole lot of horseshoe crab eggs to fuel themselves and their bodies so that they can continue that super far journey all the way up to the Arctic. So that's why it's really helpful that certain animals lay hundreds or thousands of eggs, because we're going to need a lot of those eggs so that another animal, like a bird, can survive, but then we're going to need some of those eggs to eventually hatch into horseshoe crabs. And it looks like we have a female. She's a big one. Oh my gosh, she's so heavy. She's heavy. So we have a female. Can you get me a small male so you can compare? Do you mind holding it?
No, I'm a pro now.
All right, so here we have, this is my sister Julia volunteering with us. She's holding a male horseshoe crab, so he looks like a little guy, just about the size of her head, maybe a little bigger. I am holding a female. So we can see that size difference. So the female, and you can put it down whenever you want. So the female is quite a lot bigger. And if we take a look at her appendages, we can see that all of her legs here kind of look like the chopsticks. So she doesn't have any of those boxing glove appendages at the top. So they are all the same there. And then, woo! If we take a look, they do have a different, oh, don't close on me. They have a different looking appendage or like leg in the back right here. So it's kind of hard to see. Right there, there we go, there we go. And so that is gonna help them a little bit with maneuvering in the water and along the sand. And then if we take a look past those appendages, does anybody know what we're looking at right here? Oh, it's gonna eat my hair. There we go. Can anybody tell me what exactly is right there? Ooh. Gotta be gentle. I'll wait for some guesses while we take a look at this feisty lady. And in case anyone's wondering, if she ends up getting her little chopstick type appendages around my finger, doesn't really hurt. Yes, Lisa B, gills, that's correct. Awesome. So right back here, I don't want to touch it, so if we're taking a look, that is where her book gills are. So if we were, let's see, to kind of, I don't think she's gonna let me. If we were able to kind of move her gills apart, it would almost look like the pages of a book. So those are its book gills right back there. And then in the back we have some slipper snails again. Oops, she's trying to grab onto me. And it looks like she doesn't really have too many hitchhikers on her. So I'm gonna put her down. She's kind of heavy. So my sister had actually just asked, how do they know where the water is? So if they are flipped over like this, they're going to work themselves to using their tail fin to flip themselves over, or we can go ahead and help them. And they're just gonna, they can hear, you know, if they can hear the waves or a little bit of the water movement, but if not, they can always search around and find the water. So what's my next question going to be? Let me grab one of these guys again. Alright, so now I have a small guy, easier to hold on to. You guys can see him a little. So again, smaller, typically is going to be a male, and then we see these boxing gloves right up here. And then, does anybody know how they can be helpful to humans? Maybe in like medicine. Can anybody tell me that? Or anybody have an answer? What do we think? Yeah, so they do have blue blood. Unfortunately, I cannot show you that, so I'm not going to chop open this guy. What do you mean? But yeah, they do have blue blood. It's kind of metallic-y blue. It's a very pretty color. And their blood is used, there we go, I see anticoagulant. Yeah, so I'm going to show you guys a neat little experiment that I do with the kids when they come here for their field trip. So if you just give me a minute. Let's see. Alright, So we're going to pretend that we are making some kinds of medicines, maybe like a vaccine, or just any kind of medicine. And this is going to be our jar for it, okay? So I'm going to put our pretend medicine in here. All right, I'm trying to do this while standing. So here we have our medicine. Now I'm going to I'm going to add some of the different components that our scientists are putting into our medicine. I don't deal with pharmaceuticals, so I'm not going to go ahead and try and make some stuff up. So we're going to put some in here. Here we go. Thank you. So this will be test bottle A. This will be test bottle B. So in test bottle A, we have our medicine in it and a few other components. And now in test bottle B, we're going to put different components into it. So we're trying to figure out which medicine is safe to humans. Okay, there we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put horseshoe crab blood into our test bottle A and B. And what that blood does for us is it's going to coagulate around anything that may be like bacteria or dangerous to humans. So I'm going to take my horseshoe crab blood, thank you, which like I said is blue. Took a while to get this. Just kidding, it's dye. We're not going around sucking blood out of horseshoe crabs here. We're trying to help them. So I'm going to put my horseshoe crab blood into test bottle B. This is B right here. Now, does anybody see anything happening, or is it just kind of going in? So it looks like maybe it's just kind of going in. Now we're going to take a look at A. No horseshoe crab blood in here just yet. So I'm going to put more in. It looks like it might be getting a little foamy and reacting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put more of our components into it. So if we take a look, it looks like it's getting a little bubbly, a little foamy. So I'm going to put a little bit more blood into it. Fake blood. And what happens here, we see it kind of reacting. So what's happening in our test bottle A is the horseshoe crab blood is reacting to the medicine that we're trying to make. And what it's doing, there's a component in it called LAL. I'm not going to try and go ahead and explain the whole long terminology here. We keep it simple. But it's reacting to our medicine here, and it might start coagulating around different parts of it, whether it be bacteria or something. And what that's going to tell us is that this is not safe to use. So we don't want to go and use this test bottle A. Since test bottle B did not react, I know someone said it looked like it was jumping, it's just because I was spraying it down. So test bottle B did not react. So this one would be safe to use and pass on as medicine for humans. So the horseshoe crab blood helps us a whole lot in medicine. So we can give a big thank you to horseshoe crabs for that. I'm going to go ahead and put these down. Yes, I am going to turn the crabs over behind me. Alright, so I hope you guys liked my demonstration. It's a little simple, but it kind of gets the point across to understand how their blood is used. So then I want to go ahead and ask you guys, do horseshoe crabs, as they grow, do they go and find a larger shell, or are they going to molt? Can anybody tell me that answer? What do we think? They're going to find a larger shell as they grow, or will they molt? I see Megan says molt. Okay. Trina says molt. Samantha Glover says molt. I think you meant molt. Moldy. Yeah, so the answer is molt. So these horseshoe crabs, when they grow larger, they're gonna molt out of their current shell. So I'll show you guys a few different molts that we've collected from Sandy Hook over the years. So I have some really small ones here. They're very, very delicate. So here we take a look. This is actually a little Tic Tac container. You know, reduce, reuse, recycle. So we can see really small molts in here from very tiny horseshoe crabs. But then as they get bigger, they're gonna keep molting. So here we have another one. And then if you find them in really good condition, you can see like every part of them still intact in that molt. So I think this one's a good one. So this is not a live crab, this is just a molt of the crab. There we go. And then I have a larger one in my hand. You guys can like flip most of them and let them make their way down. So if you guys can see behind me, we have a bunch of crabs. They've been hunting for crabs. There's some markings in the sand. You can kind of see where they were walking and like dragging themselves through the sand. Most of these guys, like I said earlier, are males. They're a little bit smaller and they have those boxing gloves. And then here is, I think currently the largest molt that I have on me. Sometimes we have bigger ones, but it can be hard to keep these molts intact because they are really delicate. So you can see this one's cracked right here. But I'll show you on a live crab where exactly they'll kind of come out of their shell. Thank you. So when they go ahead and molt, what happens is they end up kind of like opening up right here in the front and coming out of their shell in the front. So if I can show you on the molt, this one is cracked. I'm going to put this guy down gently. Okay, so this one is a little cracked, but we can see it opens up. I want to be gentle. There we go. It opens up right in the front. And they're just going to crawl on out of that shell that they can't fit into any longer. And then they're gonna grow their bigger shell. So they may be a little vulnerable as they come right out of their current shell. So they may not be right out on the beaches where they'll be more vulnerable to, say, birds passing by or other kinds of creatures. But that's where they'll open up and they'll come right out of there. Is there a season for molting? Let me just put this down. Let me grab my crab, hold on. Okay, so sorry guys, I just didn't want him to get away. The water's coming up, high tide's coming in. So is there a season for molting? I don't believe there's technically a season for it. I think they molt about once a year, and they only molt a certain number of times, and then eventually they'll stop molting. So this guy may still have a little bit of growing to do, but he looks like he's just about there. And like I said, I have a male here with the boxing gloves. So oh, why would they lie on their backs? So we just had a few of the crabs lying on their backs because we were getting a few of them ready to talk about, but they're all back in the water now. So they're crawling their way back, and like I said, they can use their telson to flip themselves over if they are on their backs in the sand. So if they don't have that tail there, they may struggle, and that's why we can go ahead and help them. So I'm gonna put this guy down. So a lot of what we do down in South Jersey is we will go and kind of survey for the crabs, and we do some tagging down there along with a few other organizations, and we will actually help flip them over as well. So I haven't had a chance just yet to go down to South Jersey and help tag the crabs or be a part of the survey, because a lot of the times when it's happening is late at night, and I have to be up early the next day for some lively kids coming in, so I need to be awake. But I would love to be a part of it as soon as I can, and as soon as we start doing everything again. Everyone stay safe. But what we'll do is we will help the guys, the crabs, the ladies and the man crabs flip themselves over if they are caught on their backs, because a lot of these beaches will actually pile up with lots of crabs, and there almost won't be anywhere to step, which is great news. So we can see that they're using the beaches that we're helping restore. And then in different parts around New Jersey, like I said, we do tag these crabs. So, is there one by my feet? So yeah, we will tag these crabs to kind of find out where they are going. And I don't tag them myself. That's more of our restoration department, but we will be learning about that in later this month, or a little bit of early June, because May and June are typically the times when they will come onto the beaches and mate and lay their eggs. And so I see someone saying that they're in Villas, New Jersey, and haven't seen many during the day. So the crabs typically like to come up around high tide, and more so when we have like a new moon or a full moon. So typically that's when we schedule our walks. So we'll schedule it if there's a new moon, if there's a full moon, and we will come out around high tide. So we have to make sure that we strategically schedule these walks. So if we're coming out here, say in the middle of the day, and it's very low tide, you may still find a crab, but you may not have as much of a chance of finding those crabs. So let's see if I have any other questions here. Have their numbers decreased? Are they in danger? So I would have to, I'm gonna actually let Captain Al and some of our restoration team answer I just spilled something. I'm gonna let them answer those questions because they handle a lot more of those topics surrounding the crabs. But I have heard that we will tag some of them down in like Shark River, which is near the Wall Neptune area of New Jersey. And we have found that a few of them have made their way up to like Brooklyn or New York region. But typically, I think what they have found is they will stay in kind of a certain region of New Jersey. And Megan is asking, I've seen a lot of the snails pile up on them. Does it weigh them down? So the slipper snails that you see on the horseshoe crabs, let me grab one of these guys so I can show you again. I actually have a poster right here. So we call it Hitching a Ride. We have different creatures that like to kind of hold on to them. So typically what we find are the slipper snails. Oh, thank you. And barnacles. So if we take a look at this guy here, if he'll stay still, we can see a bunch of the slipper snails that are attached right below its book gills. And they'll kind of just stay right on there and they won't move. And they're not necessarily hurting them as long as they're just on parts of the shell and not, say, like on a gill. So this slipper snail right here is getting really close to its gills. So this crab may not be a huge fan of that. He still seems to be doing okay. But if there are a lot of slipper snails on them, it may weigh them down a little bit. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're being harmed. It just means that they're going to be heavier in general. I have found a few of the lady crabs that have been covered in some of these slipper snails, and they'll be covered all along the top of them. Oop, there we go. And they'll even have slipper snails all along here and the bottom, and those lady crabs will be very heavy. So it weighs them down quite a bit. They still can move throughout the water, but I'm sure it's just going to take them a little longer. But I'm not going to go ahead and try and rip any of these guys off because they are stuck on there pretty good. Let's see. What other questions do we have? My fingers are wet. It's hard to scroll. Oh good, Kathy, you took part in a survey on a full moon. That's awesome. Yeah, so like I said, our survey events, actually Susan, who's with me right now, has partook in a whole bunch of them, and they're a lot of fun. They happen typically late at night and based around full moon, new moon, like I said, because that's when we'll see a lot of the crabs. But it's a lot of fun. Like I said, next year I would like to help participate in it, as long as I don't have some crazy kids coming to me the next morning. And I plan like a whole weekend around it. So I'm going to go help survey. I'm going to find a local campground in the area and stay there for the night, because I'm not very close to South Jersey. But it's a fun event, so if it's something that you and your family or your friends would like to be a part of, I definitely suggest it. Let's see. Do I ever take the slipper snails off? I do not, no. I'm not going to try and peel these guys off. They're really stuck on there. So I'll just, for anyone who didn't see in the beginning, I'll just hold this crab up here so you guys can take a look. Here we go. So I see Carol said, do you need a certification to help? No, you can just come be a volunteer, and you'll get instruction from someone, say from the Littoral Society or another organization that is helping out as well. But you don't need a certification. You can just come help us out. We'll explain what's going to happen, whether we are flipping them over, whether we're taking like data counts. So you'll get an explanation and you can help. I'm going to put him down. Maybe I'll walk a little bit so you guys can see the beach. Are any of them still out? Or are they back in?
There's one right there.
Okay. We're going to take a look at, oh geez, one of the crabs that's in the water right now. There we go. So if you guys can see this horseshoe crab right here, just making its way back towards the water. But typically, when we go out to look for them, so I'm wearing waders right now, you guys can see. Stylish. So are my two volunteers here. So this helps us stay dry as we walk out into the water. Well, I'm holding a giant tripod. So you guys can see kind of the bottom of the water here. And what we'll do is we'll walk around and we'll take a look for kind of circular shadows in the water. If we're going to find them and use them for education, we're not going to go out here looking for them just to mess with them. We want to make sure we're gentle and that we have good intentions. I do have a waterproof case on. Oh, there we go. See? And the water is pretty clear today. Sometimes if we're deeper or it's not as clear and we can't see where the crabs are, we can actually feel them. So we kind of like shuffle our feet around. So actually the crab right now is in between my feet and I can feel it crawling on top. So I'm not going to step on it, and it's also not going to harm me. It's just crawling around, probably looking for a female. But I am going to start wrapping it up as it is past 7 and the water is caving in on us. Okay, let me put this down. Let me grab what happens if you step on one? It depends. If you step really hard and you crack the shell, that is bad. But most likely we're not stomping around in the water because, you know, we're lighter in water. So you may just lightly step on it, but just move your foot. It might be a little weird. So I'm going to grab one of the crabs so that he can say goodbye to you guys. Okay, so we're going to name him Harry the horseshoe crab, and Harry is saying bye to everyone. Oh, sorry. Please answer John's question. How long it takes to grow a new shell? I have to double check on that. I'm not positive on how long it takes them to grow their new shell. I don't believe it's very long because they are a little bit vulnerable. Excuse me, be quiet. They're because they're a little vulnerable when they don't have their hard shell on, just as if we were to find like a blue claw crab on the beach and they were in the middle of molting, they're gonna be a little soft, so they're not gonna want to be out and about. So I will get back to that for you guys and answer online. But Harry is saying goodbye to you guys. He's trying to wave, but his tail is in the way. And don't forget, do not pick them up by their telson. This is not dangerous. It's not a stinger. It's not a barb. It's just there to help them kind of as a rudder in the water and to flip over if they are stuck on their backs when they're on the beach. Alright, so Harry is saying goodbye, and I thank all of you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. So not the best weather, but we still had fun, and we may be scheduling another live horseshoe crab walk for June for around when our next full or new moon is. So keep an eye out, and if you see any of these guys, help them out, flip them over, be gentle, and have a good night. Goodbye. Harry says bye.